All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 141 today. We're going to be talking about the recent New York Times UFO article that's trending right now. You can check us out at mindescapepodcast.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our videos. And you can also check us out at Patreon at patreon.com/mindescapepodcast. For just $2 a month, you'll get exclusive content. The last couple days, Twitter's been on fire with all the UFO stuff, and I think that there might be a swing or a shift happening in kind of the public consciousness aspect of this. The article,
That's what we said last time, bro.
well, but the article talks about things that weren't mentioned before, and I know there's been a lot of people on UFO Twitter that have been calling for this article now for like a week or two. And there's been people following it pretty closely. And you have, our buddy Chris Wolford, who we've had on, tweeting about it. You got Silver Record, all these people on UFO Twitter kind of putting all this stuff out there. And then there's also some stuff that was supposedly left out having to do with, the Wilson memo or the Wilson document that we've talked about before. That there was a meeting where they were talking about how we have advanced technology from somewhere else, and that we every 10 years or so we revisit it with modern science and try and reverse engineer or understand what's going on. So there's that, but that was kind of left out of the mix, and some people thought that was going to be part of the mix. And then there's others people saying that this could still come about too. It's not this isn't over yet. And actually, I think the Blumenthal, I believe is his name, somebody part of the New York Times, he messaged back to somebody that there might be more to come too. So, or they couldn't put everything in that article or something like that. So,
Well, that's a massive tidbit if they do have
right
technology that, I don't know if I guess it's from the past. Or
yeah, I mean, it kind of aligns with the whole Bob Lazar stuff.
Exactly.
There's a ton of people that believe in UFOs that don't believe Bob Lazar, and then there's tons of people that do believe in UFOs that think he's telling the truth, or part of his story's true, or there's even speculation that maybe Bob Lazar was convinced that this was true, but maybe it wasn't. So there's a lot of different variations or takes on the story. I think there are things that he knew about or predicted that obviously are the reason why people believe his story, and then other things like being in phone directories and stuff like that. But so back to this article though, and it just kind of reiterates some of the stuff from the initial New York Times article a few years ago, when all these videos came out, with the whole Lou Elizondo and the ATIP program and all that stuff. And then you have, as part of this article, though, I think they added in there the stuff about Eric Davis, who's an astrophysicist who was supposedly consulting on all this starting from 2007, I believe. And he's been pretty vocal that, some of these materials may not have been created on this planet, and stuff like that. So, it's some pretty interesting stuff. I think that when I said the swing in consciousness, I just mean that when you have a steady dose of this over time with everything that's going on in the world right now, nobody would have believed if a year ago, if I said, this is going to be the state of things and everything that's going on now, you'd be like,
careful.
There's no way. That's some sort of dystopian future that's nowhere, near what's going on. But now, I mean, it's
real.
Yeah, it's reality. So I do think that there is a swing, there is some sort of a shift, and especially you have people talking about this stuff that were never interested in it before. And kind of my benchmark for that was actually like 2 years ago or something. My dad started talking about it. I'm like, my dad's never been into this stuff. I mean, maybe he thought about it or whatever, but we never talked about it. My dad's he's a pretty pragmatic person. And he absolutely got into this stuff, and he's been watching like Unidentified and stuff like that. So I think it's drawn a lot of interest.
A lot of people, just like regular civilians, are starting to tap into this stuff, and I've had multiple conversations with people. I never thought that. Obviously, me and you are kind of into the the fringe stuff. But yeah, people that I would never think about are now talking about this stuff, which is a good thing, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, so when we first started when we first started doing this podcast, was it 2.5 years ago now, or 2.5, almost 3 years ago now? Um,
Yeah, I think so.
when we first started doing it, we had a different take. We were pretty, actually, even though we believed in aliens and like UFOs and stuff like that. We were pretty skeptical still about like all these different programs, and whether it be To the Stars or Dr. Greer, we were still cautious about it. But slowly over time, I think TTSA, or To the Stars Academy, is at least brought some stuff that has never been brought to the table out. You know what I'm saying? So I think that
Yeah.
that's a good thing in a way, and I think that people like to dismiss it or talk shit or whatever the case may be, but in reality, like, what have those people done? I see people crying and complaining all over Twitter all the time, or they have like, you know, differences of opinion on certain details and stuff like that. It's like, if you're really into UFOs and you want there to be like disclosure, or you want to know something, then why are you crying about it? Like, these are good things for the thing. Because you get into these weeds where people want to control the narrative. They want to be the person that breaks the story or comes up with the best evidence. There's a very, as we talk about this all the time, the ego aspect of all these different, whether it's science or academia or now even some of the fringe topics. While there's a lot of cool people that we talk to on a regular basis that don't have really any ego involved, they just want to get research out there. There are a lot of people that do have big egos that, they feel like they've been doing this forever, so they're owed something, or they're trying to make
Hmm.
money, or whatever the case. So, I mean, I think that's what's going on out there right now. But
We got to dissolve the ego. That's the bottom line. If we're ever gonna excel as a society and with any endeavor that we venture into, we say it all the time. It's like we don't know anything. So all these scientists that puff up their chests and claim that they know this and that, it's like in 100 years from now, we're gonna be laughing at you, buddy. So I think the best approach to all this stuff, whether it be aliens or UFOs or anything, dreams even, we don't know that much, and once we accept that we don't know anything, that's when the real growth can occur in my
Mhm.
eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think that there's something happening here. Uh,
Hey, getting
uh,
back to the streets, folks.
but no, but seriously, I do think that we're gonna find something out one way or another. And I will say this: let's say that some of these things are proven wrong, or they're not what we think they are, or whatever the case may be. Meaning that, what if it's some sort of technology that a different country has they're super advanced? Whether it's Russia, China, or whoever, could be a
Uh-huh.
random country too. Who knows? If that's the case, then okay. I mean, that might be a possible explanation. But let's just say it's not that technology. It's not ours. It's not some sort of um, defense contractor company or something like that, or one of the big ones that we've talked about before. If it's none of that, then you get to possible natural explanations. Which, if we're looking at it objectively, we've had people on that, like Dr. Gregory Little, who thought that possibly it could be plasma of some sort, whether it's natural or whatever the case may be. And he still didn't even rule out that some sort of metaphysical being presence associated with
Mhm.
that. I mean, so you take all those into consideration. So let's just say all this stuff is, and I believe that there's something going on. Obviously, we don't know exactly what, but let's just say that there is, there is nothing to this, or maybe we're all down this rabbit hole, and there's really something that can be explained through this whole process. Then you still can't rule out alien life. They just came out with a new updated, um, whatchamacallit, Drake
Telescope.
equation. No, Drake
Oh
equation,
yeah, yeah.
where now they've boiled it down to there could be like 36 possible advanced civilizations just within our galaxy. Um, yeah, so it does, just because whether this is true or not true, or people, going back and forth. Again, I believe that there's something to all this, obviously. But if there's not, and we find out that there's not, that still doesn't rule out life other places in the universe. So,
Yeah, I always have a trouble with the Drake equation because we only know of life on one planet. So if we did know there was life on at least one other planet, then we can start making equations. But the fact that we only know about it being on one particular place, it's hard to draw. Again, I think there is life out there just by the grand scope of things, but to be able to create equations based on only one location of life, you're still just you're still just tooting in the wind, if you will, in my eyes.
Um, yeah, I think. Well, look, it's always fun to speculate, and I think that
Right.
we try and on this podcast not speculate so much. We try and
Uh-huh.
look to actual explanations or evidence or things. The real stuff behind some of these topics and categories. But I do.
It's
Um,
impossible not to at some point,
right.
you have to go out there and
And it's fun, but I think that there is it becomes problematic when it's only speculation, and then you take your speculations and you make speculations off that, and then you've created this like
yeah.
whole world or universe of speculation, and I think that um, that's where we are sometimes. But yeah, so back to the article though. Um, this Everybody's been waiting for this crash retrieval. Like they want to know what do we have, if anything, and what's going on with it. So I think that that's an important aspect of this too, because if we do have stuff um, that's either landed here or what is it, Lazar on that Joe Rogan episode insinuated that there was maybe some sort of archaeological dig in the past where they found something.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, who knows? I think that I don't know. I want to believe this stuff for sure. I'm not like one of these people like, oh, I want to believe and like try and connect the dots, but I try and look at the evidence objectively, and I there's something weird going on. I don't know what it is, but I mean, we had Sean Cahill on talking about the Tic Tac incident,
Yeah.
and
But
that
all these different things could be something unrelated. That's because, like, if you take all the information, you have Gregory Little's stuff about the plasma, so that could be accountable for some of those experiences. And then I don't know. I'm starting to lean towards maybe there were civilizations on Earth that had technologies
so
that we
that's
don't have now. Go
so
ahead.
so that would go to the idea, which is an idea thrown around obviously by different people, but there is uh, who I think will it would be the breakaway civilization aspect, which, as you mentioned, maybe in the past there was some advanced civilization that reached a certain level and they're still hanging around, or they're on some remote outpost, or they're living in some way that's not possible that we could fathom, or the interdimensional aspect of it, where these things are popping in and out of this dimension. Um,
I'm not even going that far. I was just thinking, because we have a lot of information about the Younger Dryas, so we can probably go out on a limb and say that there was some cataclysm, massive flood, whatever else happened. I'll leave that up in the air, but there, don't you think there could have been a civilization that had some serious technologies that was washed away in that cataclysm?
um, I don't know. That's a tough one because on the one hand, I do believe that there was civilizations that had, advanced technology, but not. I don't necessarily know if it elevated to the point past where we are now. I'm not saying it's not possible,
Hmm.
but I'm just saying, when we think about Göbekli Tepe or whatever, if you even look at the T pillars at Göbekli Tepe, that doesn't scream we're able to build these flying saucers that are interdimensional. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it
Yeah,
doesn't.
I agree with that, but there's also depictions of saucers in some of those drawings and carvings and stuff like that.
Yeah, but who? Okay, so the one that people always refer to, I think it's at the Temple of Seti, the
Yeah,
Egyptian
yeah.
one. That's been debunked. That's easy to debunk. What it
Oh,
is
well,
they're hieroglyphs that were layered over time, meaning that they looked like something else. Like they were certain types of hieroglyphs that were layered
yeah.
over with other hieroglyphs, almost like scratching something out on paper and writing something over it. It's the same
Right.
concept. It just gives that illusion of those things.
Oh, so that saucer just came out as things were chipped away.
Right.
Okay.
So that's
But
debunked.
again, that's our interpretation of something. Does that
No,
mean it's
because I mean we're
100% real?
able.
I don't know.
Well, we know we can read the hieroglyphs. So if we know this one on top of this one, this is what they meant back then, and then this is what they put over it. Well, I mean that should be easy to point out. Now that being said, we know that the pyramid looked far different back then too. I don't like correlating the megalithic structures to this stuff because I just don't think that there's that connection. And if there was, there hasn't been any evidence to suggest that they were capable of this whole other thing, which would be creating some sort of thing that we can't even create now when we have everything at our disposal.
Well, let me ask you this: what do you think is more of a possibility that actually beings from a different galaxy came and visited us, or that our civilization on Earth got to the point where we were able to build things that can fly and maneuver in ways that we don't have right now?
I don't think it necessarily even has to go back as far as what you're talking about. And when I say that, I mean think about World War II. There, people could have just gone somewhere where or figured something out. You know what I'm saying? Or before
Yeah,
World War II, or a little bit after, whatever the case may be. It doesn't have to be ancient times.
it
Uh,
seems. But the World War II stuff, that's all. What is that? That's like 80 years ago, right?
yeah. So
80, 90 years ago. So almost 100 years. You're telling me that something else
well,
hasn't
that's what, yeah,
squeaked
people
out?
like 70, 80 years, we haven't, this has been going on where these conversations have been happening. And, you look at Roswell and all these things. I thought that George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell interview on Joe Rogan was pretty good.
Uh huh.
They were talking about some of the stuff that we're talking about right now. And what did they say? They said something. Well, actually, George Knapp alluded to an article coming out, which now we know just
That's the
came out.
one. Yeah.
And there have been obviously people on UFO Twitter saying this for the last few weeks as well. In terms of what they were talking about, though, again, you look at the Bob Lazar stuff. It's interesting. Are there parts of his story that don't make sense, that don't add up? Yeah, there are. And is there parts of it that do make sense, that do add up? Yeah, there are. So it's one of these dichotomies where you just don't know which avenue. But if they do come out and they do find out, or they do report that there has been retrieved craft, or there is things beyond this world that we don't know about, that we have, that we can't reverse engineer, well, I think that justifies. So either somebody told him all this and he figured it out, or he was there and he did experience these things. And in that case, where do we go from there? There's going to be a lot of people that look really stupid that were pretty adamant. So
Well, get back to that article. You were saying that they had technologies um that are from the past, right? That they found stuff.
yeah.
Okay, so that, I mean, that
But
fits
but you're
directly in with.
yeah, but you're talking about from the past. So if they found something from the past, that doesn't mean that it came from us, number one. Like you were saying, like, is it more likely that it came from here? Yes. But is that the case? You go either way on that, because
Oh, well, I'm not trying to fight that point. I'm just saying that I'm trying to support Bob Lazar's whole spiel where he was talking. It sounds like it's directly lining up with the stuff that he was saying.
yeah. Well, again, and maybe that's the case, but there are I don't know. We're in a weird place where I do feel like some of the scientists that were pretty vocal before are being quiet. And you also do have the skeptics that'll always be skeptics. Your Mick West,
Right.
your Michael Shermer, all those people. And that's fine. I understand you want to do that. That's fine. But that's not looking at things objectively. If you can't go in with the skeptic mind and say that you're looking at things objectively, because you're not. That can't exist in that world. Objectively means that you're actively entertaining all possibilities. So
Yeah. Well, I don't know how deep it goes. I don't know how these guys function and how they make their money. Like if they caved in on the
I'm not
whole
even saying that they're
UFO.
making tons of money. I mean, I know Michael Shermer's written some books about it, or he reads these great courses, things on it, and I know Mick West has like a website and stuff like that. I don't know whether they take donations or if they have some way to monetize it. I don't really know, but I just mean in terms of you're actively out there doing something from one point of view. And while you have the one side, which is yes, 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 we want it to be real, these things exist, blah 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 blah. Maybe it's not the worst thing in the world to have the counterbalance of it, but in the counterbalance, there's a lot of you know,
Hoo ha.
well, no, they're just the skeptics want to play dirty. They want to make people look like idiots or sound like idiots, and
Mm-hmm.
they have a better answer. So if you're gonna do it that way, then I don't have any sympathy when the people come for you. But if you want
Well,
to,
that's the way it sounds like everything happens, especially, with the metaphysical in general, where when you're talking about spirituality and things like that, you get these materialists and they really jam it because they have actual credible, not credible per se, but they have material things to show you and
right,
accounts and stuff that you can actually test in this realm. And that's a lot easier. It's a lot harder to be like, I'm going to trust in faith and, go on this feeling that I have, or you can look at more numbers and materials and this and that. And then for, as a human living in this material world,
right.
not as a material girl, but it's a lot easier to go with those, you know what I'm saying? Like that's going to win the argument a lot easier than you're like, well, you got to have faith. And even if deep down you feel like a loved one that's passed away is with you and stuff, well, that might be your brain playing tricks on you and this and that. So, those guys are always going to come out and they're always going to be able to beat down these other people that they're almost asking you to have more faith and
Well,
take a chance on
I don't even
something.
know if it's more faith. What you have with the UFO stuff is bits and pieces. You have some military reports. You have journalists looking into these things. You have different aspects, kind of, that come together where people create the picture. And then you have now, I mean, we have more stuff because of the ATIP program. We have these 3 videos, which I think have helped change a lot of people's minds on the possibility of these things existing, whatever they are. So at the end of the day, now there is evidence for these things. Where are the scientists that are analyzing them that are actually taking it seriously? Do you know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
um,
So now that the things are entering into the material, people are still poo-pooing.
well, yeah, because that's just what they're gonna do.
Right.
But at the same time, I do think if you are looking at it objectively, something is going on. So I think you even have politicians now. There's been Defense Department briefings. You have Marco Rubio look into these things, and he's saying things like, if this is from a different country, we have to look into these things. They're in our airspace. If we're not keeping on top of this stuff, what are we doing? Kind of a thing.
Right, right.
So, and that's kind of been reiterated by a few different people, which I agree with. If we don't know that there's something in our airspace
Oh, that should be top of the list. Are you kidding me?
and it's connected somehow to stuff happening in the military or around military stuff, then we do have to, at least we owe it to the country and the people to look into it and see what the hell is going on.
Yeah, if there's stuff in our airspace, and it's not ours, we better pray that it's aliens. Because if it's other countries,
Well, yeah, and the only thing I would say too is it so compartmentalized where maybe there are different aspects within our own government that have different knowledge or things they're doing things that the other ones don't know about. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but that definitely should be looked into as well.
yeah,
But I mean, yeah, I don't know. You can go on and on and on and on and on with all this stuff. I just think it's interesting. We live during these crazy times where other crazy things are happening, and now this comes out, and I know people are. Well, maybe it is an interesting time for this to come out. A lot of people are stuck at home or always on their computers now.
yeah.
Because
I'm a big proponent. Especially our last episode was more all about my spiritual awakening and stuff like that. But I feel a shift in consciousness as a whole as our society kind of moves into the future here, and this stuff is ripe for the time. I think a lot of stuff in the next 5 to 10 years is gonna have a shift, paradigm shift over the whole society. So get ready, folks.
well,
And
if
don't
this
be
is true, and
afraid.
if they can prove it, meaning that we do have craft, and they're gonna let it be known or whatever. Who knows where this is gonna go from here, but if that is the case, that is a paradigm shift, because how can
Right.
somebody explain it? And I think if that is the case, they should be letting these top scientists look at it so they can dump their pants when they're.
Hey,
So
you got a Depends I can borrow?
um, I mean, look, I've said it before too. Everybody wants there to be aliens, but hypothetically, let's say you're sitting in your chair at nighttime in your living room, and all of a sudden
Hmm.
an alien walks through the door. Are you gonna feel so warm and fuzzy then? You know, it's
Or
kind of.
you're Joaquin Phoenix
But
watching the news, and all of a sudden the alien walks by, and
well, again, we've had different people on with different theories. We've talked with Dr. Michael Masters, who is I think he's an evolutionary anthropologist, I believe, or something like that. He's a teacher too, and he wrote the book "Identified Flying Objects," and he
right,
believes that these craft and beings are time travelers. They're us. They're just from the
yeah,
future, which could make sense. You know, if you look at where we came from, evolving from primates to what we look like now to what we'll look like possibly in the future. You know, and you have space travel, and then we know that people lose bone density and things like that happen. Who knows what will happen if you're traversing time and space like that on a regular basis? You might look completely different. So um, we've had that. We've had, again, Dr. Gregory Little, who talked about his plasma stuff. And then we've had, I'm trying to think who else. Obviously, we've had Chris Wolford on, who's big into um, the To the Stars Academy. We've had Sean Cahill, who was on the USS Princeton during the USS Nimitz Tic Tac incident. He had his own sighting experience, and that's a great episode too if people haven't checked that. I mean, all the ones I just mentioned are great episodes, but I think the
hmm
Sean Cahill one's specifically compelling because he actually saw something. So
yeah. I'm not sure. Have we found like other organisms, like live organisms on different planets at all?
no.
Okay, so
Well,
the
okay, so there has been reports in the past that we might have found like fossilized microbes on Mars, but then they'll come out and say, "Oh, we were wrong. It was this other thing or something like
right.
that." I think they have found that things living on the outside of the International Space Station, and then I think they found tardigrades on the moon,
hmm
which we've talked about. Tardigrades, which are also known as the water bears, they're extremophiles, and
Ugly looking thing.
and they dehydrate themselves so they can stay alive and like crazy, whether it's hot or cold, or they've survived nuclear blasts. I mean, they're these
Yeah, the
crazy.
7 cataclysms we're aware of that
Yeah.
the Earth has endured.
So if
They've
you look at
survived them all.
that, and there's speculation that the Earth could be constantly be seeded from the universe too, and that could be happening all over the place too, or panspermia, directed panspermia. Um,
Uh-huh.
so I think that when you look at this phenomenon, it's something that's always just out of the grasp, though. It's always just out of reach. I don't think that, and this is my personal opinion. I don't, even if you get into the government stuff, I don't think that there's one person or a group of people or whatever that have all the answers or know what's really going on. I think that there's people that have better ideas. So when you
I
look at,
know there isn't one person that has
well,
all the
yeah.
answers.
But my point is, when you look at the government, people are like, oh, they know this or they know that. Well, what I would say is they have better tools to monitor things. Radar. You have all the FLIR cameras. You have all the stuff, so they have a better idea. But I still don't think they have the whole picture, and I don't think anybody does.
Right. No, I agree. I don't think we really know what the hell we're doing here. And that's the whole game of life is trying to figure out what your own path is, and then if you can kind of figure out your own path, then it allows you to help other people find their own path. So it's just a big learning experience. That's why I get so down on these people they're so set in their ways. It's like, first of all, we're never gonna break new ground unless you think about we always bring it up, but think about all the musicians and the artists and stuff. These people, like the Beatles, when they did Sgt. Pepper's and shit, it shocked people's minds. I think some guy gave it a horrible review because it was just so out there. But that's the
Mm-hmm.
way people are. It's like when you get something new that's completely out there. At first, you're not gonna like it. Every band that I love right now, Fish, Grateful Dead, Radiohead, Wilco. Didn't like the music when I first heard it. I didn't get it. I thought it was bad, and that's the kind of stuff that like grows on you over time. But that, in my opinion, I think that's the stuff that actually lasts the test of time.
Hmm. Yeah, well, there's certain elements to those bands that you mentioned that you wouldn't get from like a conventional band. One being that they're musically inclined. You
Uh
know, you
huh.
look at Fish as musicians, they're far better than any musician you're going to find in any sort of pop song or something that's on the radio or
For
whatever
the
the
most
case may
part,
be.
yeah.
I mean, there might be a couple hired guns here and there playing on other people's records, but in terms of like bands and quality, I think that there's something to that, and there's a reason why there's a cult following for the Dead and Fish, and it's because they do something with their music where they take
They
you on a
take
journey.
risks.
Well, they take
Yes.
risks. They implement tension and release, which is not a very well used. I don't hear people using that in other contexts in music that know what they're doing or know how to
Yeah.
use that. So there's that. I mean, and there's a reason. These songs tell stories, and I think
Right.
we love a good story. We love a good myth. We just did all those episodes on all those star myths with David Matheson, and the two that we did with Arthur from Norse Secrets, and I think that those were great episodes, and I think I learned a lot too. That was one that's aspect of that kind of stuff I really hadn't looked too much into before, but I really
No,
enjoyed
that
that.
shit that fired me up. It took me to a point where I wanted to get out there and start shooting the stars and the comets and stuff more. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm a landscape photographer, but the sky is just a whole new playground for that kind of stuff.
right. But I do think that with the UFO thing and this article coming out, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Is this something that's going to die down again a little bit, and then there'll be another article, and like where is this going? Because if this is just the pattern, right? Like you mentioned, like, oh, another article, oh, people are going crazy over, oh, then it dies down or something else happens, or the 2-day news cycle or whatever takes over, and there's something else that's more important, or whatever the case may be. Is that going to keep happening? And if so, where's that leading us? So I think that this will be interesting to follow going forward. So far, I've actually enjoyed the Unidentified series. We're going to have Chris Wolford back on soon. I don't within the
Nice.
next week or two, I would assume, to talk about what the Unidentified series has done so far. The first episode was about older sightings in Vietnam with some older guys and some weird things that happened there that couldn't be explained. And then the last episode was about the black triangular UFOs that people see, and if that's our own government. People call them TR3 or TR3Bs, I think they're called.
Mm-hmm.
And is that us or is that something else? So that's kind of an interesting one as well. But we'll see where this goes.
What was that satellite that Tesla said he had the Black Knight satellite or
Yeah, did Tesla say anything about that though? I don't know if he
I
did.
thought I was reading something about
Yeah,
him
but you
saying
could
he
you could
getting
read a lot.
frequencies from.
Yeah, you could read a lot of
Well, right,
shit.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's real or not,
But what
but
I'm saying is, what you could have been reading could have been some like bullshit site or article. Like that's what I'm saying. You have to look hard at these things to make sure you're not reading like the Inquirer or something like
yeah,
that.
well, I wasn't on that site, but yeah, I should double
Yeah,
check
but
and
if
then
you're
check
looking on
again.
like Twitter or Facebook or whatever, something might pop up. You might not even look at the source and just start reading the article.
Mm-hmm.
We know Nikola Tesla was into metaphysical things, and he believed he was like downloading information, and that's how he came up with some of the stuff he did. And when he would go into his thought experiments, he would be able to visualize some of these things, which I think is, for anybody that's a visionary, that's why people, when they meditate or whatever, they have psychedelic experience, that visualization of a concept is very important. Um, but
Yeah, keeping your mind open to the frequencies that are out there.
so what do you think? Because you talked a lot of shit when the first one we did on
Oh,
this.
I always talk shit,
No, but
baby.
I'm saying back in the day when we first started I think the first episode we did on this kind of stuff was with Emerson, and it was pretty skeptical. I think that's after that time. That was after that Tom DeLonge Joe Rogan thing, and
Right, yeah,
I
yeah.
thought that was actually a mistake by Tom DeLonge to go on to Rogan's. No,
Yeah,
no, no. I'm being
he
honest.
got lit
I
up.
think it was a mistake to go on so quickly, and maybe he underestimated Joe Rogan's questioning abilities. There's some people that talk shit about Rogan. Again, I
He's
don't.
developed into a pretty good
Yeah,
host.
and people are like, oh, he's not he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's not that smart. Well, I beg to differ. I actually think he's pretty smart, and the people that he gets on are pretty smart, the scientists and stuff like that. So, and there's a lot of other podcasts that try and critique him, and like, dude, you have like 1,000 followers. This dude's got millions and millions, and even
yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're.
But what I'm saying is that he commands an audience. And then when he interviews these people, like when he interviewed George Knapp and when he interviewed Lazar, he wasn't asking like as a fan. He was asking some pretty hard questions. Like you can't go into these things being like, the people that criticize him are usually the people that want to hear him say, "Oh, I believe in UFOs, they exist," which we all want to believe that, but I think you have to take a critical look at these things. You can't just be a fanboy asking questions. I don't think that works out. That's just an echo chamber.
But for him to be as successful as he is, we've learned this lesson too. Not that we've done it or anything, but when you, especially with like political stuff or whatever you may be talking about, if you go one way or the other, you're immediately going to cut your fans in half. So I think he's aware of keeping his views within and then kind of being in the middle, and then he can navigate from there, because then he's never alienating anybody, and then he's not going to have people listening and be like, "Oh, well, he's the alien guy and I'm against aliens, so now I'm done with the show." You know what I'm saying?
Well, there are people that say that, and there's people that he says, when he says he doesn't fully believe, or he doesn't know yet, or he changes his mind, or whatever the case may be.
Well, that's the Bigfoot guy.
So, but I use that as an example because, like, I think about that too. Like, since we started doing this podcast, my views have changed. I feel kind of like I understand his evolution of his show. If you look at the very early episodes and the stuff that he was saying and believing to where he is now, I kind of identify with that in a way from doing our own podcast with our own topics and, guests and things like that. While I still believe there's something to the metaphysical and fringe stuff, I also don't believe as much of it as I once did. So there is this, there's this back and forth.
Well, that's a big important concept to look at. Like, I'm a photographer, so I look back at the stuff I was doing 3 years ago, and I'm ashamed of it because it's so bad. But then I remind myself, it's like, dude, that's a good thing, because if you look back and thought it was amazing, then you wouldn't be growing in any which way. So
right.
The fact that we can change our opinions, change our minds, that's us evolving as a person, regardless of what the concept is.
Right.
So I think that's a good thing in your book.
Yeah, I would agree. But just what I'm saying is, like, so I do think that Tom DeLonge going on there early was a mistake. What he should have done is waited and then gone on with like Lou Elizondo too, and had somebody else. Like, because while he's part of To the Stars Academy and stuff like that, I would say that Lou Elizondo is actually the reputable aspect of it. Not that Tom DeLonge isn't a part of it or he doesn't know what he's talking about. Maybe he does.
No, but he's still a Blink-182 dude, and
right. Well, I just think that there's that shouldn't matter either. But I just think that there's more when you're trying to bring credibility to something.
That's what I'm referring to. Again,
right.
It doesn't affect my mind, but if you're just a Joe Nobody and you're like, "Oh, the guy from Blink-182 is into aliens now, let me pop this on and watch," it's going to be a lot harder to sway them. Whereas you have a Elizondo type on there who has more of a commanding authority figure, it'd be a little more credibility in that department. But I think since that, I think DeLonge has gained more accountability.
Yeah, again, I just think when you looked at what was going on, there wasn't this big push yet. And I just think that the thing that killed the Rogan DeLonge interview that was early on was the fact that he couldn't say much. He actually wasn't talking that much about those 3 videos because he was just talking about who was part of the To the Stars Academy and who was on his team, but he couldn't answer a lot of questions, and he couldn't.
Remember when he played that video and Rogan's like, this is fake, bro.
Yeah. So again,
that's CGI, and it's not good CGI.
I do think that was a mistake, but at the end of the day, who knows? Hopefully Rogan will have Lou Elizondo on, even if it's not with Tom DeLonge or anybody else, because I think that should be an interview to be put out there for sure.
Mm-hmm. I'm also interested in seeing how Tom DeLonge, like if he was just a nobody, how high up in that company would he be? Because obviously he has clout because he has dough, so he's dumping money into it. Like that'll raise your status a lot quicker than just having the know-with-all, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I could see that. look, I
Like,
don't.
when did he turn from guy in van looking for UFOs to all of a sudden Mr. Scientist, man,
Well,
you
he
know?
talks about it in that interview and meeting certain people and trying to get in that way. Like if you listen to that Rogan interview, he does explain that.
Right, but the only way he met them was because of his fame from the band anyway. It
Right.
wasn't like he's just like pulled off the streets. Like, okay, this guy has people that are like listening
No,
to him.
right. Well, the other thing is it had this whole thing sounded like an initiative. Like, hey, we know there's something here. What's the best way to disseminate this to the masses? Well,
Uh-huh.
if you were asking me, to somebody that promotes like our podcast and stuff, being attached to a bigger name or somebody that has a lot of popularity or clout is the
Yeah.
best way to get information out there, because more people are going to listen, whether they take
Well,
it seriously or not. You'll have people that'll look at the evidence for what it is.
well, Scott Stapp from Creed's available. Should we
No,
try and get him?
he should take a Scott nap.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so if you look at the evolution of this from even that first episode that we did on this to now, I mean, my mind's changed a few different times back and forth, and I keep an open mind. I'm not willing to die on one hill and say it's for sure this or it's for sure that, or these people have it right and these people don't, or whatever the case may be. I'm just an observer. Like when I'm on UFO Twitter, I just read everybody's stuff and deduct my own opinions and philosophies from there.
Well, I think if you keep an open mind, you are going to be a waffler. You're going to be flip-flopping back and forth because something's going to come out that sways you one way. You go, okay, that makes a lot of sense, and something new comes out. So it's a tug of war with the mind. I think that's the same kind of views you've had on the whole spirituality thing, and hopefully
yeah,
we'll
I
get
mean,
you set up.
that's the other aspect of this though too, is this idea that these things could be interdimensional. They could be somehow related to our spirituality.
Yeah.
I mean, you see that there's people that suggest obviously all this stuff, correlations to ancient texts and religious texts, and you mentioned some of that stuff earlier, and then you have those weird paintings from the Middle Ages and later on that have weird UFO looking things in it, where it's like, where is that a cloud? It doesn't look like a cloud, but
Right.
that kind of stuff. So I don't know what to think. I do think though that we just got to keep an eye on this. I mean,
So this article came out this week, or was it
came out
yesterday? What day?
yesterday.
Okay.
Don't worry, folks. We'll get Maurice to start reading shit beforehand. But
Hey, man, sometimes you got to have the everyman's view on this whole thing.
yeah,
And
you are an everyman. If you had to say for sure what you thought though right now, like what do you think? Do you think it is otherworldly, or you think it's some ancient civilization, or what are your thoughts on it?
I'm a betting man, and I think it's a safer gamble to say that it's all based around the Earth, and either it's from ancient times or interdimensional. Maybe I like the theories of its future versions of us coming back and things like that, because there is no proof that there's other life on anywhere else in the galaxy or universe. So until there is proof of that, I have to kind of stick with my view. Listen, I look up at the stars, I go, there's probably life out there, but there is no proof of that. So if you're a betting man, then you would probably bet more on the fact that it came from within, our solar system, mostly our planet, because that's the only place that we know life has existed. I know people have argued that at one point Mars had life on it and stuff like that, but again, we don't know how far back this stuff goes. We know that there's been civilizations wiped out, and they did know things. Again, the pyramids aren't this like flying saucer, but we can't figure out how to build these things, these stone structures. So figure out how to build these stone structures, and then I'll say that our society is smarter than that society. I think that they knew things about architecture that we didn't know. So they definitely knew other things about spirituality that we didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, we know the Egyptians were pretty in tune with the dying process and taking the body apart and taking the brain apart and taking organs apart. So they definitely had a knowledge of the body and biology. You look at Da Vinci, who didn't openly do it, but he would take cadavers and take them apart, and had a good knowledge of the body. So I mean, I think throughout time, you do have people and civilizations that have knowledge of things that others have never even really looked into. And now we do have obviously biology and the sciences, and we understand the mechanisms behind certain bodily functions and things like that. But it's always an evolving picture. And yeah, I think that if you were to look at this stuff objectively, you would say that, yeah, this is weird. But what is it? You know, like that's the next step is, what is it? Is it interdimensional? Is it from this planet? Is it from our oceans? Is it somewhere from inside the earth? Is it somewhere from outside the earth? Is it interdimension? You know, like what is this?
That's the camp that I'm in, because there's so many different options where it could be still within our earthly realm. Number one, it could be interdimensional. Two, it could be from the oceans we barely even know about. The inside the earth, we don't know. We just don't know enough to say. It's not. We should start focusing on checking off some of the stuff on that list. But again, that shit takes time. It takes money. It takes resources, and I think we're more worried about shooting stuff into space than discovering stuff in our own backyard. That's my opinion.
And everybody should be open to new ideas and be malleable and try and be objective about these things. I'm going to read this quote from Richard Feynman, who's the physicist, and he says, "You are under no obligation to remain the same person you were a year ago, a month ago, or even a day ago. You are here to create yourself continuously." I also read that when I was a guest on Martin's podcast, The Alchemical Mind. So go check out his podcast if you haven't already, if you're into like alchemy and meditation and psychedelics and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a weird world we live in, weird times. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. So that's why this doesn't surprise me in the least bit that there might be some sort of, obviously we're already into this stuff and know a lot about this stuff, but when you get into where we are, there could be something weirder that's going to even unfold in the near future, or at least I wouldn't put it past anybody.
Yeah, you know, my only advice is to keep your wits with you and just be ready for some kind of change. And I know a lot of people are having some rough times with staying in and all that stuff, but you got to just accept it for what it is. The more you fight what's going on, the more resistance you create, and that's just not good for life. So
yeah,
my advice is to go with the flow. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but it is what it is, and you can't change it. So you might as well go with it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if there is a follow-up article or to see where this progresses to. But I will say that, just like you kind of said, like keep an open mind, and even if something crazy does happen, still try and keep it in perspective. And if you're at home and you said people, being cooped up and getting crazy and anxiety and depression, stuff like that, use this time, if you're a creative person, to feel your creative outlet, whether it's a podcast or you're going to make a movie or you're, an artist or a musician or whatever it is, utilize that aspect of your being. And I think that that's a good way to deal with everything that's going on. So,
yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that's a good way to connect into the unknown, whatever it may be, but centering yourself and getting yourself into that creative mode,
right,
for me at least, helps me out. I think everybody has some kind of creative juice flowing through them. So right. I think, a lot of people kind of put it to the back burner, especially when you're getting into these 40-hour-a-week jobs and stuff like that. I mean, the stuff that you did as a kid doesn't seem so important anymore, but I think that's the stuff we did as a kid. It keeps your mind fresh. I mean, think about kids and their energy levels. They don't worry about shit. They just create, and they see the world with these fresh eyes and stuff like that. I think if we can get back to that, it would do us all good. I think that's kind of the path that the psychedelics kind of have. Like when you take some mushrooms or something like that, it kind of takes away this adult vision of the world and brings back the playfulness that you had when you were a kid.
And if you're not, an artistic or creative person or whatever, I would say maybe look into finding what that is for you. You know, maybe there's something you've always wanted to do but never got into it or something like that. I think that could be helpful too. I'm huge on creativity. We've talked about it many times on this podcast. I actually believe that our purpose is to create, create art, is to create other life. That is our purpose, in my opinion. So
I agree with that a lot.
So, was there anything else you want to say? I wanted to keep this one kind of short just because we'll have other follow-up episodes with guests on to talk about this kind of stuff. But I did think it was important to address this article, especially since it's a topic we've talked about many times on this podcast.
I don't have anything else to say, but I think it's a good thing that we're putting the information out there, and we're also keeping ourselves at the forefront of all the new developments. So we're going to be there to capture it in its full. Ladies and gentlemen, Mind Escape.
Maurice is getting a little too spiritual for his own britches. This guy's losing his mind.
No, man, I'm just, it's, you can look at it in two different ways. I'm excited to be alive right now. I think that we're in an exciting time. I know a lot of people look at it with the opposite eyes, but I think that we're all here for a reason. I think that we're all here in this time for a particular reason, and there's going to be some kind of shift, which has already went underway. And I appreciate our fans. I'm glad everybody's joining us, and I want to take everybody along with us for the ride.
Yeah. And shout out to Tim. He just said, been listening to your guys' podcast on iTunes and watching on YouTube. Keep up the great work. Thanks. We appreciate it, and we appreciate the kind words. I want to give a shout-out to 2 new patrons that we've gotten recently. Joseph, shout-out to you, and shout-out to Anne. We appreciate you guys being patrons. And, yeah.
Beautiful.
Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we love everybody. Again, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. And check us out on our website, mindescapepodcast.com. And we also have a Patreon page, which has exclusive content on there. Patreon.com/mindescapepodcast. For $2 a month, you will get exclusive content. And we're working towards some things, too. We're still working on trying to get these T-shirts made. And Maurice has been working on a Comet little short documentary style film. And
yeah, I'm chasing it all right. Capturing the comet.
It just shows you constantly moving to new places, and it's always raining and it's always overcast.
Yeah, I went out the other day. I went up to Port Austin, and it was massive cloud cover, but I got some good pictures too. Again, folks, maybe in the next week we'll have this new video up, and I'm trying to capture it for everybody. I'm not that, if you can go out and see it with your own eyes, that's obviously the best. But I know a lot of people living in these big cities, they can't go out and just look at the comet. And I'm right next to Detroit, so I can't just see it right out my own window. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it with the naked eye.
Dude, are you kidding me? The Chicago, there's a glow. There's like a red glow. There's a red glow that comes off the city with all the light pollution. You can't see. I can only see like the big main stars.
Yeah. So. Well, you're kind of on the outskirts, though, and it's to the north, so that's the direction that isn't the glow.
Yeah, if you're looking for the comet, it's to the bottom left of the bottom portion of the Big Dipper.
Right,
if you're looking for it, or Ursa Major.
Yeah, if you're looking at the Big Dipper, look where the cup is, I guess, and you'll see the streak.
Yeah.
It's pretty miraculous, but again, you got to get yourself into a darker zone. I think I'm going to go out tonight, folks, so send me good vibes and clear up those skies.
Yeah. Isn't it only visible for like a few more days or something?
Yeah. It was really visible the last couple of days because it was a new moon. So the moon, even the light coming off the moon can drown it out. But yeah. I'm hoping that there's enough darkness tonight. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we'll look for that video. We'll be working on that, and we'll be back next week with some episodes. Maurice might be here. He might not. We don't know what's going on yet. He might get sucked up by a UFO, or he might get sucked up. But yeah, so we'll figure.
No, I'm just trying to I'm trying to engage in as many adventures as I can, and like I said before, go with the flow, folks. You know what's good for you in your own life.
Yeah, this might turn into a travel correspondent type scenario here with this kid.
Yeah.
So
I'm here on the edge.
This kid's spiritual awakening is really taking him all over the place. So. Well, that's it. Again, I'll put the link to the New York Times episode down below, and I'll put actually at the end of this video, I'll add um, on the end screens, I'll add the playlist that we have for all the UFO episodes we've did with all the guests and scientists and stuff. So
Nice, nice.
that's it. So you guys take care out there. Stay safe, everybody. We love you, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Cheers.